Turn this on. See, okay, looks like we're feeding through to the folks out there. Let me take this second while I'm waiting for confirmation of that. You guys let us know if our audio is coming through okay, if there's any issues with that, and we'll try to get that adjusted. Of course, I want to remind everyone to go to hankstrange.com. Looks like we're feeding. That is the best way to support our efforts here. Go to Hank Strange. You can get on our email list. You can also pick up some Hank Strange patches that we have. We appreciate you guys getting the patches from us. Also, look around the site there. There's lots of different things that you could do if you want to find out other ways to contact us, support us, etc. Okay, let me start loading people into the podcast here. Let's see. We'll get everyone up. And then I will hit the open button.
Welcome back to the Hank
All right.
Strange Situation.
Welcome back to the show, guys. Make
Lifestyle
sure you
of the
subscribe,
rock and
smash the
roll.
thumbs ups, ring the bell so you can be notified every time we go live. So we've got a couple of new guests. They don't know about jazz hands. Yes, gentlemen, we have this tradition here. We've been doing it for 3 years. It's called jazz hands. If you're a tough guy, don't worry about it. We're taking it back from the terrorists. Can I see jazz hands from everyone? Come on, there we go. Look, I'm actually getting jazz hands. All right, I hope you got your big girl panties on because we are live. And this is episode 673 of the Who Moved My Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Hank Strange. The title of the show is Decentralizing Our Ecosystem. And our guests are Rob McNealy of TUSC. We also have Steve from Rexcentilium. Did I say it? Did I get
Silentium?
Silentium. I knew. Yeah, I knew. I was gonna mess that up. We've got We've got Steve from Silentium here joining us, as well as Flying Rich. You guys can see Flying Rich is there. Also, big shout out to everyone who's here. As you guys come in, please smash those thumbs up. Share this if you can. Help us to override the algorithm here on the YouTubes. We really, really appreciate that. Now. So just for, if you're joining us, you want to know, like, what is all this stuff that we're talking about? I have no clue. We're going to start there. I don't know about any of this, but I know I've been having conversations with you guys for a while saying that in the firearms industry, in the gun world, gun community, we need to start, we need to start having ownership over our own ecosystem. I don't know if that's a good way. I don't know if you guys... here on the panel agree with me on that. But we need to take control of things. And I think lately with everything that's happening, the results of the elections, social media platforms out there being activists and deplatforming people and trying to control the message, all of that stuff that's going on, we really need to start thinking about how do we communicate with each other? How do we buy and sell things to each other? All those kinds of things around that. So that's why we're having this conversation today. That's the reason why Steve and Rob and Richard are here. They're going to try to explain to me and you all exactly where to start because I know it's a little daunting. So welcome everyone out there. I'm going to start with Steve first. If you could just tell the folks out there who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, my name's Steve Lovis. I own and operate Rex Silentium. We are a suppressor manufacturer located here in Bozeman, Montana.
Okay, very cool. And I think that you've got some alternative ways of people being able to purchase stuff from you.
Yes, and for some time now, we've used I believe it's coin payments as another method of payment on our website, and we've used it for, I believe, about 5 years now, so that folks who are coming to make purchases from us can use a variety of different cryptocurrencies, not the least of which is Bitcoin.
Okay, very cool. And then now I'm going to go to Rob of TUSC. Rob, if you could just explain to the folks out there who you are, what you do.
My name is Rob McNealy. I'm based in the Salt Lake City area, so high five to the Rocky Mountain West, right? But I am one of the original co-founders of a community-driven, non-ICO cryptocurrency payments project that was tailor-built for the gun industry. So much like Steve was just mentioning Bitcoin, we're kind of like Bitcoin that was designed for the gun retailers.
All right, very cool. And I'm going to go to Flying Rich. If you could just tell the folks why you're here, other than if people need lessons on how to crash your plane every time you land. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Everybody's just bringing it up. Actually, I used to mine Bitcoin. So I mined Bitcoin, and it's a sad story, just like my plane crash.
Uh-oh.
I lost all of my Bitcoin with Mt. Gox.
Oh, okay. All right. So,
Ouch.
yeah, you know stuff the hard way, Rob, I think. Okay, so I guess we should start here with what should folks know if they're trying to, if they're trying to get into this, right? People have heard horror stories like what Rob's mentioning. What Rich is mentioning. If someone's thinking about this, where should they start? What's the basics of what they should know about cryptocurrencies, for example? I don't know who wants to jump in there. Maybe Rob, if you want to.
Rob, why don't you start?
Yeah.
Oh, they can throw me to the wolves in the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
There's a lot in that question.
Yeah, I know.
So I'm going to try to keep it at a high level, okay? Because I think if we start getting nitty gritty, we're going to lose a lot of people because it is really a lot of information to swallow. But think of it this way. A lot of our payments now that people are comfortable with, whether it be credit cards or debit cards, or people are familiar with the demons like PayPal and Venmo and Square and Stripe and Cash App, all those payments are basically digital transactions, but they're denominated in dollars, and they go through a bunch of activist banks that hate gun people.
Right.
So essentially, cryptocurrency is another way to move value around, but the underlying unit of transaction is not a dollar. It is a new type of currency. And so ultimately, as we go and get further into, creating and abstracting better on and off ramps, being able to get that cryptocurrency from dollars and back into dollars and out of dollars, as getting those things are kind of complicated right now. It's a little harder than just, using Venmo right now. But over time, from the end user perspective, the transaction of value shouldn't be much different than using something like a Venmo or a PayPal or a Cash App over time. And projects like TUSC and even on, Bitcoin and some of these other cryptocurrency projects, they're working on making that process easier. And it will get easier in time. But from the end user perspective, it's just moving value around. Instead of using dollars, it's like using a different type of currency. I mean, for instance, if you were using a cash payment app that was denominated in Swiss francs, it's not dollars. Well, you can do the similar type of transaction with TUSC or Bitcoin.
Okay. And so folks out there might be asking themselves, why would we want to do this? By the way, shout out to Harry's Holsters, that's a sponsor of the podcast here. I appreciate them doing that. And that brings up something. Like, I got banned for life from PayPal because I'm a gun guy.
Right.
And
Private account.
Yeah, my
account.
personal account. And it wasn't like I didn't buy a gun or anything like that or sell a gun using PayPal. There's a certain company that I might have just mentioned that sponsors this podcast, and because they try to support us through PayPal, got banned. And I know it was that because Lola said, okay, I'll create a PayPal and try to do this. She went through the whole process. Immediately when they try to make that payment, she got banned for life. And that's insane. Like, we can't have a company come in that literally makes Kydex holsters and support us without getting banned. So if someone's wondering out there, and I know, Steve, you manufacture and sell suppressors, did you come across the same thing when you decided to start using...
Yeah, I've been radioactive for 5 or 6 years, in the suppressor business. So, and I think anybody, anyone you talk to who's in the suppressor business or even in the NFA, business is going to tell you the same thing. It's very hard to find processors that won't gouge you into oblivion, just to handle, the credit card, this antiquated credit card system.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's very difficult, and you can't even go near, PayPal or any of these other ones just because of their weapons policy. And of course, the people writing and implementing and ultimately deciding on that policy are as ignorant about firearms as you could be.
Absolutely.
Well, and I'd like to piggyback on that. And what Steve's talking about is the terms of service on these third-party payment providers, these PPPs, prohibits lots of things like CBD, gambling, pornography, typically sex workers, and guns. And this is not for legal reasons, but the excuse they say is because there's quote unquote higher fraud or higher risk with these type of industries. And so I always like to point that out. It's not because that guns are illegal. This is a pure policy decision made on the part of these activist banks that clearly do not support guns at all. So I like to throw that out there. That's not because guns are doing something wrong necessarily. It's just because the banks have chosen to prohibit them.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
So
there was also
I'm sorry, guys.
the,
I'm sorry. Forgive me for this. Let me just interrupt for a second. I'm seeing in the comment feed that there's a lot of people having, like, I can see we have folks in the chat, but they're saying they're having a tough time getting any video. Like, I see Clover Tax says, "Can anyone watch anything else? Go try." I can't. So I don't think it's just us. If there's something happening out there, I think who knows, man. YouTube. Huh?
Video on my end here.
Yeah. I think some people are getting it and some people aren't. So maybe there's a problem with the server or something going on right now with YouTube. So we're gonna soldier on here, and in worst case scenario, we'll be able to put this up. I know Steve has a limited time, and then we have our other guests here for the full 2 hours. But we're just gonna keep going, and because on our end everything's good, right? No one's having any issues.
Nope.
I'm not.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so forgive me. Where did I interrupt you, Steve?
Oh, I was just going to say, again, I believe it was Eric Holder in the Obama administration started some kind of policy or tried to implement some kind of policy where they were going to choke us off from the banking system.
Yeah, what was that called?
Operation Choke Point.
Choke Point, yeah.
Circa
Choke Point,
2012, 2013.
Right. So I was luckily not swept up into that, and I work with a regional bank out here, and they are, all full disclosure, they know exactly what I do, it's I have to seek those kind of businesses out, because otherwise, and it's happened about 3 times to me where all of a sudden the policies will change or they'll just be pulled out of the blue, and my credit card processing is gone, and then that's my cash flow. So.
Yeah, I can give you guys another example. After I initially met Rob, or I don't know if we met. This is actually the first time we're seeing each other. We spoke over the phone, but there's a company that I do a lot of stuff with, Andrew's Custom Leather. He makes holsters, leather belts, and things like that, right? And they use some exotic leathers, etc. So he's been doing business for 40 years. Making people make orders online and stuff like that. Someone at the bank realized that he deals in leather, and they said, "How do we know this guy's not getting illegal leathers?" And they literally froze his account, and then didn't tell him. So
thank you, the Lacey Act amendments of 2008.
Yeah. So this.
How do you know you're not getting a diamond? I mean, they all look the same, right? I mean, they don't stop to beers or any of these guys. That's such bullcrap.
Yeah, it's a nightmare that's happening out there. So I think this is the reason, to simplify it for you all, this is the reason why we're talking about the money side of it. There's social media and stuff like that we'll talk about later, but this is a way they could cut us off and make it impossible for us to be able to do business with each other. And we're talking here about stuff that's guaranteed in the Constitution. Yeah.
Well, and the Constitution is just a codification of pre-existing rights.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
This is just an extension of the bureaucracy that then goes into the private sector.
So let's say we realize that now. What are we doing? I know, Steve, you're doing stuff, and I know, Rob, you're doing things. What are we doing? What should we be doing about this?
Well, who do you want to go, Steve, or?
No, go ahead. I'm using up all the air.
No,
Well,
no, not at all.
I would like to say, I don't know if you guys saw there's a lot of announcements that have happened yesterday and today. I don't know if you saw the listing of the advisors to the Biden campaign now on the different agencies, and it's all Silicon Valley people. Facebook, Google, all of them literally have advisors to the president. So if there's this thing called quid pro quo, as they say, and if it's not obvious enough during the election, it's pretty obviously now after the election that Silicon Valley certainly is biased and definitely politically biased in one direction. And I think that's important to know because we've never been at this level before where corporations now are super political animals to the level that they are, not only to the point where they maybe just, they maybe don't, maybe it used to be like the CEO would donate some money to a candidate he liked, or maybe they'd hire a lobbyist, but now we literally have, especially not only banks becoming activists, but social media platforms, which are absolutely influencing people's perceptions. And that's a very dangerous thing right now because they are these third-party gatekeepers. And the banks have been doing it, as we mentioned before, since Operation Choke Point for, 8 years now, where they're also picking and choosing who the winners and losers are in transactions. And I think as you, broke the story with, John Crump yesterday about, the ATF is going to be going after certain things with this current administration. I believe, they're going to go after certain features, obviously, and accessories. But, I have a feeling I think they're going to revive the zombie of Operation Choke Point. And so I think on both sides, I think there's these decentralized technologies, whether it's for social media and for payments. But what that means, what are decentralized technologies? So I've talked to a lot of retailers like Steve, especially before we ever even started coding TUSC, and to find out what their problems were in the industry. We had a good idea, but we wanted to really hear firsthand before we started building something what people needed. And what we kind of found out is there's a whole lot of ways that people are getting hammered out there because of middlemen. And what I like to say a decentralized technology is, so for instance, if you wanted to accept Bitcoin or TUSC for payment as a retailer, I'm a co-founder. I don't own TUSC. There's no, I don't own TUSC. There's not a company here. It's a decentralized project. Anybody can participate. And a decentralized project is somewhere between like a nonprofit and a co-op is, I guess, the best way to describe it because it's like a new thing. Decisions about how that network are made on on governance are done via voting on a blockchain through a proposal process. It's all done on software that everybody can look at and read and see what's going on. And so I always like to tell retailers that, using and accepting, for instance, for payments, decentralized cryptocurrencies, you're pulling out the middlemen between you and your customer. So right now, if you're using a third-party payment provider, it's going through a whole myriad of third-party banks that are settling between one another that dollar transaction. And every time you have a bunch of middlemen in the middle of things, those middlemen can stop things, whether it's political or otherwise. Whereas if you accept TUSC, for instance, as a payment, or even Bitcoin as a payment, no one can shut you down. Okay. No one can stop you. If I hated you, Hank, and I don't hate you, but what if I say I hated you and I said I don't want anybody using TUSC to buy those stinky patches on his website?
Thank you.
There's no way I could stop it.
Right.
There's nothing in the software that could prevent that transaction from going through. And so that's the difference. And decentralized cryptocurrencies are essentially an insurance policy against being deplatformed and debanked on the payment side. Now, there's a lot of other benefits for using TUSC that we could get into later. Economically, it's still better than credit cards on top of that. It's cheaper and faster and things. But the key is you can't be stopped by a political activist bank. Or a meddlesome politician that may hate what you do for a living. And that's the difference between credit cards and centralized credit cards and centralized banking and decentralized cryptocurrencies for payments.
Okay. So Steve, I think that like what we all realize, these are end runs that they're trying to do, right? On the Constitution and all that. And they're like, okay, well, this is how we could cut it off. We can't get them here. We get them there. What was your thought process on this, and how did you decide to incorporate this into your business? And how's it working for you?
So out of the many tens of thousands of transactions, we have had maybe some, dozens of transactions. So it's a very, very small amount of our, transactions over many years that, people actually use it. And I think that's because all these notions that we've discussed are good and they are valuable, but there is a barrier to getting into this, and it's a technological barrier, and it's also a risk preference kind of barrier. Mm-hmm. So what you're doing is when you're taking out the middlemen and all these counterparties, you're assuming all the risk for holding and then using it correctly, and I'm referring to the cryptocurrencies here. Mm-hmm. And so that's a learning curve. It's fairly steep if you are just a casual user of technology. Mm-hmm. In a former life, former manufacturing life, another business, I used to make institutional computer parts and indirect liquid cooling systems for server farms. Okay. So I was proximate to the computer industry. So when I saw in 2009, actually I saw it in 2010, I wasn't that early of an adopter, but what attracted me to it was the fact that it's permissionless and it's immutable. Mm-hmm. So immutable means you can't alter the transaction. So if you make one, even if it's an error, mm-hmm. You can't undo it. And mm-hmm. so a lot of folks have to get their head around that. And like what Rob was saying, about censoring or deplatforming or interfering, mm-hmm. Materially with your business and your transactions. That is a benefit, to be able to prevent that. But mm-hmm. then you also have to take responsibility. And I remember a Catholic friend telling me how bad free will sucks because it puts the responsibility on you, mm-hmm. So
where it should be
there's for adoption's sake,
right? Yeah.
There has to be, it's still gonna be a very long time, I think, before we get this. And mm-hmm. the trailblazers like Rob and others, I think are definitely moving us towards that goal.
Yeah, so it sounds like we're, is it adoption, I guess? Is that a good word? That's the problem?
Well, like right now, you can go down to the bank, right? Open mm-hmm. up a bank account, mm-hmm. take the paper and metal you have in your pocket, deposit it, use a debit card, and mm-hmm. so the friction is a little bit lower. Mm-hmm. And I use the word friction, I guess, because it's just so highly available, right? Mm-hmm. There's banks everywhere, there's ATMs everywhere, mm-hmm. and then these little plastic cards that are antiquated are mm-hmm. in your wallet. Everybody's used to it, but this notion of a asymmetric encrypted unit of value.
Yeah, it's so scary.
Yeah,
and we've seen horror stories like what happened to Rich.
Right.
Yeah.
And, then the fact that the Bitcoin doesn't exist in the mm-hmm. physical world necessarily. It's electrons and mm-hmm. in a very specific order. Mm-hmm. But that is, I think that's the biggest impediment. And so it's like, because I don't know how many times I've had a conversation with just friends, casual, and they ask, well, how can I get into Bitcoin? I explain it to them. It's like, next topic, done. They're even just the acquisition of it. Of course, mm-hmm. I don't want to sell mine, mm-hmm. but the acquisition of it is very, it's protracted.
Okay. So you're saying once you try to explain, that's where you lose them, or?
Basically, because they're
okay.
So in order to convert like $1 into some amount of Bitcoin, face-to-face transactions are a little bit. They're the easiest way, and that's how I have done it. And mm-hmm. then of course I accumulate it through my business, but again on a very, very low scale. Mm-hmm. So what Rob is doing in terms of making this system that is a plug-and-play system for websites, in e-commerce. I think that is going to move things much quicker because when somebody goes and sells a holster and they have the option of somebody paying in a cryptocurrency, or TUSC in this case, I think that is the way that's going to drive adoption, because then once they have that, value, once they have that unit of account, they're going to look to spend it. Okay, because that's what money is. It's the most saleable product. Okay, and so but you have to also have the component that you're going to be able to use it again. Otherwise, it has no value. Okay. So if all transactions were to stop, if all commerce were to stop, value of money would go to zero.
Yeah. I think that's the big thing, right? It's maybe just programmed into our genetics or something to be afraid of trying something new, jumping in. Right. You're going to mess up. You're going to make mistakes.
And it's going to cost you money if you do. You know, so that's but again, I think that as if we can kind of pull it, instead of push it, I think that'll work better in the long run.
Yeah. And I'm going to piggyback a little bit on Steve again, is that we knew all that going in, because Bitcoin is like the Model T, it's the Ford, it's the first car. It's also the most adopted, it's got the best name recognition, everybody's heard of it. But it also is very low tech. It's very hard to use. It's very unforgiving. When we built TUSC, we designed it to be a lot easier to use, and we're going to be adding a lot of features over the next year, especially on our roadmap, to make it super easy to use. So one of the things that are complicated when you're moving Bitcoin around or some of these other types of cryptocurrencies is you have this long number of, which is the wallet address, which is really complicated and unforgiving. On our blockchain, we have human readable names and account names. So you can set up, Silentium or whatever, silencers or whatever is your account name. So you're not going to make a mistake with this long gibberish encryption hash, as they call it, which is the wallet address. So I think over time, one of the other things that's kind of unforgiving is that if you lose your keys to your account in crypto, you're toast. We're going to be working on a system for key recovery, and that's a ways out, because to do that right, it's going to be very difficult. But we're also working on digital ID integration with Project Hydro, which we think might be helpful to pre-fill out, say, 4473 forms. Not that we're tracking what's on the 4473, but if someone comes to you and say, I want to pay with TUSC, and we haven't built this yet, but we're working on it, because we just announced this partnership with this other crypto project that so someone brings their wallet over and they can just scan it at the retailer and automatically downloads their 4473 data and fills out their form, because there's a lot of mistakes with 4473 forms that can be a compliance nightmare for FFLs. And in addition, we're looking at doing some things like escrow features. So like Steve was mentioning, that if you make a mistake sending something, that it's unforgiving, we're going to work on that too. So as a crypto project, one of the things that we like to do, which is hard with a lot of other crypto projects, is we're trying to bring like a basket of resources to bear that any retailer can use to integrate accepting crypto. So that's not just like, this is your account, but how do you deal with the tax piece? Because, crypto accounting is very different than normal dollar accounting. Thank you, Mr. IRS. And how do you get in and out of it with crypto? So how do you get your initial cryptos? So another thing we're doing, we're going to be partnering with an ATM network. So for certain retailers, not only we're going to bring them into TUSC, but we're going to bring in a crypto ATM into their lobby, which may help people pay them with TUSC. But on top of that, the idea is that if the retailer wants to accept TUSC, it'll actually make transaction times shorter for them to reset their money. So for right now, with normal credit card processing, you might need to wait anywhere from 3 to 7 days, typically, for Visa to give you your money. Well, with crypto, once the account is approved and verified, you actually have your money. It's already in your wallet. So on TUSC, our confirmation times are about 2.5 seconds on average. So think of it this way: for like a mom and pop retailer, they want to accept TUSC for a purchase. They have a crypto ATM in their lobby. The minute that transaction is approved, they can literally walk over to the ATM and get cash out of their ATM. And so the idea is that it could actually increase cash flow, because you don't have to wait for that ACH from Visa or MasterCard or American Express. So it actually speeds things up. In our network, the transaction fee is only 0.5%. And so it's even way cheaper than credit cards. It's just as fast as credit cards. But getting people on board, it is a little clunkier and harder. And so some of the things we're working on over the next year is being able to make it really easy for people like retailers to actually onboard their customers. So kind of our strategy for getting people to use our crypto is we're going to be training retailers and educating them and giving them all the education materials so that they got and basically discount and incentivize their own customers to pay them in TUSC. It eliminates their chargeback risk because there's no chargebacks on TUSC at all, which is a big problem for a lot of gun retailers, especially the custom gun builders out there when people get impatient after a year waiting for their, unicorn lollipop Glock 19, right?
Right.
So sometimes they do chargebacks, and because the gun industry is considered red flag, they don't get appeals for those chargebacks typically. So you figure just on the economics, 0.5% transaction fee, no chargeback, instant settlement, so you can cruise your cash flow, and it's an insurance policy against debanking and being deplatformed in case Visa, decides to partner with Biden and shut you off from that expensive thing. And on top of that, there's no monthly maintenance fees. So I know a lot of retailers in the gun space, and this is why they're really interested in crypto is because, and they have a hard time with credit card processing because not only are they paying higher, per transaction fees on those credit cards, but typically what they're finding is they're also having to pay monthly maintenance fees just to have the account open. And that's why a lot of retailers want to go to third-party payment providers like PayPal and stuff because they're not paying a monthly typically. And they don't have to pay a monthly with us. So just on the economics of it, it's worth trying to go through that learning curve.
Okay.
And over time, that learning curve is going to get smaller because we're working really hard as a project because I am not a developer. I am an entrepreneur, and my first focus is making this as easy as possible for people to use. And it's going to take another 6-12 months to get there because we know all the work we need to do to get there. But I can tell you that is our main focus of bringing cryptocurrency and decentralized technology to the industries that need it most. And right now, it's the gun industry in the United States.
Okay, so let me do this because we have Steve for a limited time. I want to let Steve get questions and make comments here because he's someone we know doing this for a business. Steve, just feel free to jump in here if you have any questions.
Sure. The one thing too that benefits this industry from cryptocurrencies is privacy. So when you buy a Glock 19 with your credit card, there's not only the 4473 that you'll ultimately do, which is for government compliance, but the credit card company has your name, age, date of birth, and all that information, and then they know exactly what you just bought, and they sell that data. That in fact that information is extremely valuable, and it's actually highly behavioral, and they also correlate that data with other data points like your location and everything else that your phone is constantly beaming. So cryptocurrencies also give you incredibly more privacy in your transactions, and as a result of that, you will not have your behavior and your data being bought and sold by nameless parties, like it's happening on social media and stuff like that. And think of the integration there too. The integration between your social media and the fact that you just bought a Glock 19. I mean, this is. I mean, predictable analytics and things like that. I mean, these things are real because of the data streams that they're plugged into. Yeah.
So let me ask this, because for a lot of folks out there that don't know, including myself, where to start. And I would try to ask. I'm going to start with Rich here and let him jump in. How did you get into this, Rich, if you can, real quick? And then I'll find out from Steve and Rob. What was your first time getting into cryptocurrencies?
Okay, so we're talking about mining Bitcoin, and I guess it was almost 10 years ago now. So a buddy of mine was talking about it. I started looking into it, and I was like, wow, I could make money by doing tech stuff, and I like doing tech stuff. So I actually built a mining rig, 2 motherboards, 4 video cards, each one with custom-built liquid-cooled water blocks and a Ford Fiesta radio.
Okay.
And thing's putting out like 1,500 BTUs. So when I was in Minnesota, it was heating the house. So there was a side benefit to that. It's techie, it's interesting. So the thing that people have to understand, like I work for a company now. I don't even see a check. I don't get a check. I don't go to the bank and cash a check. All that happens is there's some mystical transaction out there. Could be Bitcoin, could be TUSC, could be anything. And all of a sudden I can buy things on Amazon and they get delivered to my house. Mm-hmm. So the whole, as much faith as we have in the American dollar in that EFT transfer from, the company I work for to my bank to Amazon, that's how Bitcoin, TUSC, all of this other stuff works. And I think we need to start understanding that it's not all that complicated. Just like I had to get a bank account, a credit card, whatever, you get a Bitcoin wallet, a TUSC wallet, and then the retailer, like if I buy from the Hank Strange FFL, Hank Strange has a wallet just like I do. And if I have the firearm sent to you and I, do the financial transaction with you, boom, it's all set. Or, I buy something you want to sell me, that Henry rifle for $900. That's out of my price range. Mm-hmm. I could just say, okay, I'm sending you the money now. I'll come over and pick it up on Sunday. Mm-hmm. And it's just that simple. People, it's really not a complicated thing. I think, well, in fact, all the banks are actually going to a blockchain-based accounting system. Okay. So whether you think or don't think you're transacting through a blockchain, you actually are.
Okay. All right.
The cool thing about all of this is, like Steve was saying, the bank isn't going to F you when it sees you're buying and selling Glocks or SHTF 50s or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. Your data isn't going to get sold. You're not going to be on a list. Mm-hmm. Plus, like if you're afraid of selling something and getting a chargeback, there's no chargeback. There's no clawback on the finances. Mm-hmm. So that's a big deal. And, like my corner FFL, anybody's corner FFL, their credit card processing company could cut them off anytime for any reason.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Like if the two bad guys come in and buy guns, like two known bad guys, but they clear the background check, and they're like, hey, those guys were terrorists, or fill in the blank, and they're like, you're supplying firearms to terrorists, and that's it. You're done. Chase Manhattan's no longer going to process your credit card.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Very interesting. Steve, with you, how did you first get into this?
Tangentially, just like most things. I had read a few articles about it in a more techie kind of article, and it piqued my curiosity. I've always used encryption and just in communications and those types of affairs. So when I saw this applying encryption to transactions, and making the transactions themselves, a long chain of these encrypted pairs, it definitely piqued my curiosity. And then as I learned more about it, I never mined any of it or anything like that. But the gatekeepers of Bitcoin at that particular point in time, because nobody fully understood it, the barrier to entry and things like that was much lower. I mean, so you could, buy it on eBay, with PayPal before anybody knew what the heck you were doing. Mm-hmm. And of course, the price of Bitcoin at that particular point in time was concomitant with something of low value. So that's how I got into it. But then as I started to understand more about it, it seemed like that silver bullet that freedom is great, and it's what God gave us. And if you don't believe in God, it's a function of your humanity. And so human action is buying and selling, and it's the exchange of ideas. Mm-hmm. And the more you limit that and draw geopolitical boundaries around it, and the more you tax it so that you get less of it, the more you extinguish human spirit. Mm-hmm. And that on a 100,000 feet level, philosophical level, is what is so attractive about it. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to offer it as a put my money where my mouth is kind of thing. I wanted to offer people the ability to purchase, with that medium.
Okay. All right. I'm going to give you a chance, Rob. How did you get involved with this? I'm curious. I've never done any of this stuff, even after having spoken to you. I want to sit down and wrap my head around it and maybe dip my toe in the water, put a couple of bucks out there and do it. How did you get into this?
So I've known about Bitcoin, or I had known about Bitcoin for a long time. And I was like a lot of people, I was, very suspicious about it. And I didn't like some of the early promoters, like the people that were really kind of, telling people to buy Bitcoin, it's the future, were like these guys like literally living in their mom's basements. And I don't take financial advice from people living in their mom's basements, just not a good practice, I found. And so I was always a little suspicious about it. And, then it was like $12. And I think I got into it or started learning about it when it was like $8 roughly. So much later than what Steve, kind of came into it. But finally, I started going to some crypto meetups in the Salt Lake area. And I met some people that were really smart. Not just like crazy, like liberty type activists, but guys that were really, really dialed in, and they explained it to me, and I started getting closer to it. And I'm like, so basically I had a guy that held my hand, and my wife and I threw some money in it to invest in some different crypto projects, not just Bitcoin, but a bunch of other ones. And it was kind of funny. And that was a whirlwind because that was I didn't even start investing in crypto until 2017. So I'm a latecomer,
okay.
But I'm an early. But I also like to dive deep into new things. And every time I've dived into something, so literally from the time I first got my first crypto, 6 months later we had already started our own crypto project. I pulled a team together, and so I take deep dives and I jump in head first. And that's what we did with crypto. So I was a latecomer into crypto. I knew about it, but I didn't actually pull the trigger on it till probably early 2017.
Okay. So, I don't know if you guys want to move into a different section of the conversation here. What do you think we can do with this? What are the applications for this? Where can we use this in the firearms industry? Maybe Steve, you're in the firearms industry and you're using it. Do you see other people in the industry doing what you're doing, or?
I don't know. I haven't really looked around, and I haven't had an opportunity to really proselytize, about cryptocurrency with other manufacturers and things like that. Things are so hectic, especially right now. The one thing I did want to say, though, is that in recent news, PayPal is going to offer Bitcoin conversion soon. I don't know what that's going to look like, but the conversation we're having now, and it's like, so we've explained how great it is. Now, how do I go get it? That's going to be significant, even though, there will be some traceability if you do purchase it. There are ways around that, but that's for a different that's a whole different topic. But, basically, if Bitcoin, if PayPal does integrate Bitcoin like they say they're about to, then you'll be able to have a PayPal account and then convert into Bitcoin and then presumably move that off PayPal and into your own private wallet. And so that, I think, will also help if that is the case. It's anybody's guess. But that's gonna help.
I just worry about PayPal, right, with their activist nature. Where are they going with that?
Right, but I mean, just in terms of getting, so if it's easier for people to get it, and let's say in your case you're banned, right? You're like, hey Steve, I really want Bitcoin, and I have a PayPal account. I could be the party that helps you buy it, So the more accessibility, I think, if PayPal is in fact going to do that, the better. I mean, because you can still follow transactions, right? Because they're on a public blockchain. So if you can identify that, I know for sure Steve Lovis, spent this particular Bitcoin on XYZ, and you have that, location in the blockchain, you can follow, you can trace it. So it's not 100% private unless you adopt the right practices, which is a whole different topic.
Okay.
But that will, if PayPal does integrate it, that's going to be a big shot in the arm. In fact, the price of Bitcoin has reflected, they're pricing that in right now, basically.
Oh, okay, yeah, it lends towards legitimizing it. Rob, I know you have a comment. I also want to get this in here. Len Holt says, does Rob think that blockchain is being developed now for control purposes or some form of tracking? The established financial system has done its best to throttle it. And then, of course, it's kind of like, what I would add to that, it's kind of like how TikTok was coming along kicking Instagram's butt, and then Instagram goes, oh, we'll make our own kind of TikTok, we'll call it Reels. And I think there's lots of, like we're talking about PayPal, they're looking at things going on and going, oh, okay, yeah, this is getting more and more popular. We want to buy into the real estate of this somehow. What's your take on that, Rob?
Well, first and foremost, I absolutely agree with Steve. I think PayPal allowing people to make purchases of Bitcoin is a very bullish thing, a very good thing for the adoption and spreading awareness of crypto. I also think that PayPal is not going to change their position in their terms of service on guns, so people can buy Bitcoin with PayPal, and then they can move it over to TUSC to buy a gun. So I view it as a really good thing because I don't really view either Bitcoin or I view PayPal as a competitor, but in this case, I think they're going to be a competitor that helps us grow.
Yeah, Rob did, Steve did this. Don't tell the tactics.
So they're not going to change in terms of service. And I think to answer your question about tracking, one of the things that I believe in, I believe right now we are kind of in a technology arms race between the centralizing people that want to centralize and become the gatekeepers of technology, including cryptocurrencies, and now the people that are trying to push out the decentralized versions. And so you have to ask yourself, would you rather, if you were a retailer and say in the gun industry, would you rather work on a network that was built by gun guys for gun guys to solve a real problem, or would you want to just take JP Morgan coin, for instance? Now, I'm not saying you can't, but I'm saying is, as far as the technologies of blockchain, I absolutely believe they'll be weaponized against us. And I absolutely believe if you look at the way Silicon Valley is completely totalitarian, they're anti-free speech, and they're absolutely in bed with, let's just say the Biden group. I'm not going to call them an administration yet. But if you go through and look at it, yes, I think there's a problem there because we already know that those Silicon Valley folks do not support free speech, and they're the ones that absolutely are getting in bed. So right now, Cash App is run, by Jack Dorsey of Twitter. And so we know damn well that they do not believe in free speech on Twitter whatsoever, and they are definitely anti-gun by every stretch of the imagination. So I believe it's like this. We need to get cryptocurrencies, the decentralized cryptocurrencies, and I'm going to step back. I mean, I'm very bullish and excited about what I'm working on with TUSC, but if TUSC doesn't make it and Bitcoin is the only one and they can scale and they can figure out some of the problems of why Bitcoin's not great for retail and they can fix those, I'll support Bitcoin being that decentralized blockchain that does that, because I know that at least either TUSC or Bitcoin or some of the other projects out there that are decentralized, they're not controlled by Silicon Valley, they're not controlled by the Chinese government, and to me, I'm trying to look at the big picture 5-10 years from now. Is everything controlled and tracked like it is in China, in the United States? And we're heading in that direction. And so to me, help us get out there and get adopted, because the cryptos that are actually adopted for payments are the ones that are going to be the powerful ones, that whole first to market advantage. Right now, I know, for instance, many central banks are working on technology to build their own crypto coins and cryptocurrency projects. You have the US dollar, which is going to be Fed coin. They're all coming. And so the question is, we need to get out there first. We got to get people using us first and learning how to use and work with TUSC, because we are not part of that system and we do believe in decentralization. So I think ultimately crypto is coming. Blockchain technology is coming. It will be ubiquitous. It will be everywhere. The question is it run by people for centralized purposes, or is it run by decentralized? Are they decentralized projects that are taking hold, or centralized projects? That's the arms race.
Okay. So any comments on that from Steve or Rich? You guys have any comment on what was said there?
Nope, that covers it.
Okay. So what are the problems with Bitcoin?
It's very slow. It does not scale. Scalability for 50 transactions per second or 5,000 transactions per second. It's like trying to steer the Titanic. And so the beautiful part about the cryptocurrency space is that you have innovators that are using the model and then adapting the model for very specific markets, as in the case with TUSC. But they're also solving the problems that are inherent, with Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin has forked I don't know how many times, and that's when the chain splits. So
what does that I'm sorry, what does that mean when the chain splits?
So if it's actually I think Rich could answer that better. It has to do with the miners and the people who are actually the nodes that are in the network itself. So and that's not really a huge issue. It doesn't take anything away from you. In fact, if the fork works well and you own Bitcoin before that fork, you actually get whatever forks forks after that. So if that turns out to be a really good fork, you benefit from it.
So is it like a stock split kind of a thing?
Yeah, you can almost look at it that way.
Okay.
I can explain it in a way that people understand it now. Because so I can tell Steve is a super smart guy. And I'm going to bet you're an engineer, aren't you?
I'm actually an economist and a statistician, but close.
I can tell you're smart, right? So essentially,
he's not your average gun guy that I've met, and I know that some gun guys are going to get mad. He's not caveman type like me.
I'm a recovering corporate MBA, so I can relate. But this is how I look at it. So there's different types of codes, and there's different types of blockchains. So Bitcoin is what they call a proof of work blockchain. And so what happens in a proof of work blockchain, there's not a lot of communication between the people running it, the computers that run it. They're all independently run, these nodes as they call them. But they're just computer servers that people run to help support the network. And then the transactions go in a ring almost, and they all agree on these transactions, and then becomes part of the permanent record. But here's the thing. If the community wants to change something in that code, a majority of the computers have to agree to that code change and then basically redeploy the new version of the software. But if a certain number of the people don't want to agree to those changes, it kind of splits off, and that's a fork. And so I would argue, at least with Bitcoin, some of those, they call it a fork, but just say the blockchain split. Like one group decided we want to change this, and one group says, I don't want to change it. And they go off and kind of do their own version now.
It's like different factions almost, or something like
absolutely.
that. Absolutely.
And they're very contentious. And I would argue that those contentious forks are bad for those proof of work blockchains like Bitcoin, because it fractures the communities around them that support them, and that splits them up and things like that. So all a fork is, it's a split in the software. It's basically a split in the community running that blockchain.
Okay. Right. Okay. I think I could wrap my head around that a little bit. I can wrap my head so because I know we've got like I don't know, less than 10 minutes left with Steve. What
I can continue on. That's not a problem.
Oh, you can? Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by this because, Steve, we kind of like dropped you in this. John Crump linked us up together, and then we were having Rob come on, and we were like, oh, maybe you should come on too. But I'm fascinated by, I know what Rob's mission here is with TUSC, and you're actually a retailer out there. And it seems to me like you kind of like this idea, which in my brain, when Rob was telling me, I was like, these gun people, they're going to be very resistant to this.
Well, yeah, I can see. I know what you're talking about, that culture and stuff. But and that may be the case. I'm not sure. I can't promise you anything there. But I'm going to be following TUSC now very, very carefully. It just hasn't been on my radar. My radar sucks because I've been so backlogged with work.
Yeah,
but,
it's been a crazy year for the firearms industry.
Oh, 2020, yeah, just bananas. And of course, we do a major sale once a year, and we decided to do it early because of the election, and we didn't want to, roll the dice on the probabilities of something going south. So we had our sale early, and it was a success, but it was quite a painful one.
So what are the things that you're thinking here? Just like top of the head kind of stuff. Like, what questions would you have for Rob? And Rich, if you have some questions too, I know you were on yesterday on John Crump's podcast, which I recommend everyone go take a look at that. I think you guys did a great job. I looked at it. What would you guys' questions be for Rob that you're trying to find out? And even people here in the audience, if you're just joining us, because I know that there's something massive going on with YouTube. Our audience has been shut down to like around 40 people for this whole time, which is really, that's not what usually happens here. So I see everyone commenting about that, something happening with YouTube, but we're recording this separately outside of YouTube, so I've got complete ownership over it. Go ahead.
There's a bunch of merchant platforms that TUSC is available for. So, Rob, you want to go into a little more detail on that? Because I think that's a key element.
Yeah.
So we don't have the plugins yet, but we will have those the beginning of the year. So of 2021. So we're going to be integrating with we haven't done the official announcement yet, so I can't like spoil who it is, but we're partnering with a company like Coin Payments to provide all the little plugins for the shopping cart software. So we'll have basically WooCommerce and Instacart and Shopify and some other for the non-FFLs because Shopify hates FFLs. As well. So we'll have at least 6 probably by the middle of the first quarter rolled out and deployed. So people who have those different shopping cart softwares can easily just integrate TUSC. For those that, and some people do more manual things. So if people wanted to do a manual transaction for TUSC, they could do that now. And they could set up an account for free today on TUSC and get some TUSC off an exchange, and then they can transact for TUSC right now.
Okay, and for what's the best description for the folks out there if someone's just joining us right now of TUSC? How do we explain what it is to someone out there?
Just a digital commerce payments project or that's designed to move and facilitate. I don't like using those long words.
It's like it's like Bitcoin, but for the firearms industry. Yeah.
It's like Bitcoin for guns. You know what? I hate leveraging other people's brands.
I said it.
Everybody's heard the word Bitcoin. It's interesting.
Yes.
And I went to SHOT Show this year, and I went to Gun Rights Policy last year, and the NRA convention last year. Everybody's heard the word Bitcoin. And even in the gun community, even with these older FUD kind of guys, right? They really do have heard. They have heard, but most of them think it's a scam. That seems to be like in a lot of the 2A community, at least the older 2A community. And you know how it is in the 2A community, Steve, right? There's definitely different kind of.
Everything is a conspiracy.
Yes, yeah, and
half of it is.
Well, about a third of it is.
Yeah, okay.
But essentially, it's just a new way to do payments that is not basically denominated in dollars, but a different type of currency.
Okay, and we're right now on the ground floor, right? How many different businesses are out there already using TUSC as we speak?
We're just in our alpha, so we just have a handful right now.
Okay.
We got about a dozen that have committed once we have the payment gateways up. But on our roadmap, we're focused on doing what we call our onboarding push for retailers isn't going to be till next summer. So that's when we'll figure we'll have, not only is it we need those little plugins for the e-commerce they're called payment gateways, these little shopping cart software plugins. we need to, we got to develop a bunch of educational content as well. So we're going to be making a lot of explainer videos, for instance. We're finalizing some exchange partners in the United States, because right now we're only traded on international exchanges, and we're in negotiations with a couple of domestic exchanges, because the American exchanges are the most regulated, but they're also the most trustworthy, but they're the most picky. So they're really hard to get on. And so what we're working on that. So right now, this year and the first part of next year is all about building out our infrastructure and building out liquidity. And that was alluded to earlier, is that people need to feel like, if a retailer feels like they're going to accept TUSC, they may not want to hold it as an investment. They may need to sell it and be able to turn it back into cash at some point. So we're building up that liquidity now. So by early part of next summer, we shouldn't have any problems with liquidity, and that'll make it more comfortable for retailers to onboard. In addition, we're bringing things like TaxBit and some of the accounting pieces to it, and we want to bring the ATM networks into some of these larger retailers so they can cash out really quick on the fly. So there's a whole lot of pieces that kind of come together before we do our real big outpouring and push to the gun retailer world. But we're just kind of getting the word out now that this is what's coming. And I think, especially with what it looks like the outcome of this election, I think it can't come fast enough.
Yeah. Right. So just for folks out there, if you want to know, I know Len Holt says translation, the very beginning. Yes. The very beginning of this, early stages, which is a good thing and a bad thing, right? I think it's a good thing in terms of, if you're out there and you want to know about this, you're going to find Rob, for example, very cooperative in terms of explaining things to people and all that kind of stuff right now at this moment. The bad thing, so for example, Rob, you cold called me, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't know how you did it. You looked up on the internet. I think my number is out there for this reason, so that people could reach out to me. But my first thing was, I was like, dude, I don't know if you're scamming me or not.
I'm not trying to, and it was funny because I said, look, I'm not here to sell you anything. And I haven't tried to sell you anything. But I think that's the difference. That's another difference between TUSC and, say, Bitcoin. There's no one from the Bitcoin project, for the most part, that's going to go to SHOT Show, that's going to go to NRA, that's going to go to Gun Rights Policy, or cold call you to get you to work with and promote it. And so I think that's the big difference, is that we designed our crypto project around helping onboard retailers. Whereas some of these, other projects like Bitcoin, they just don't have anybody that can do it. They're not structured that way.
Yeah. And by the way, just if anyone wants to know, I asked Rob, give me some references. And I think you gave me 3 people who I know and trust in the firearms industry. I reached out to all of them. One of them was John Crump. He said he wrote an article or interviewed you about a year ago. And then there's some other folks out there that I reached out while we were talking. And I said, hey, do you guys ever heard of this dude? So I got back good things, and that's why we're here. But if folks out there want to know more about you, if they don't want to take my word for it, I think this is really important. What can they do to find out about you and TUSC, for example?
So I am all over the interwebs, and you can just Google my name, Rob McNealy, or go to robmcnealy.com. I also do a podcast as well. And you can even see that, at one point I actually ran for Congress in Colorado 10 years ago. And even then you could look up that at that time, I was the only candidate in the 2010 election in Colorado that got 100% on the Rocky Mountain Gun Owners Candidate Survey, 100%. 10 years ago, and they wouldn't publish it because I was registered as a libertarian. I wasn't a Republican, and that organization would not market libertarians.
I'm pulling up your Twitter, by the way. I see you've got about 371K followers.
Got a couple.
Yeah, congratulations. That's actually pretty cool for social media.
And so to me, I got a long history of being out there. So you can easily find me and verify that I've been very consistent on being a gun rights person and a gun guy for more than a decade on social media. I'm not new to this industry. I'm not just trying to carpet bag and try to pitch, some shit coin. Like I said, I can't sell you crypto if I wanted to. I can't. I don't have any to sell you. If you want to buy TUSC at some point, you have to go buy it on an exchange from some random guy. I can't sell it to you. But I think ultimately, if you want to learn about the project, you could certainly go to TUSC.network, which is just TUSC.network. We also have a full set of socials for TUSC that are separate than my personal ones as well.
Okay, and I'm pulling up the website and stuff like that and sharing it with the folks that are out there right now as we speak. Steve, what are the kind of things you would want to know about this, or what's your vision or questions that you would have if you were trying to incorporate something like TUSC?
One of the other facets of Bitcoin is that there's a fixed number of them. And because of that, it is a more deflationary type, store of value than an inflationary one, meaning it's going to gain value just by the sheer properties of there's a limited amount. And so my question for Rob is just, in terms of the scaling of the network, is there a specific protocol for modest inflation for newcomers, or is there just going to be one set amount, and then as the popularity of it increases, so does the value?
So we do have an inflation rate. Currently, that inflation rate is coded at 5%, and we do not have a max circulating supply. So that is a little different to some other cryptos. Now, there's arguments, pros and cons. Now, so one of the things that I always say is we're not building an investment. Now, it will go up in value, I think, if we're successful, but that is not why we're building this. Why we're building it is a payment option. So, and I mentioned this a little bit on John Crump's last night. So why do you have an inflation rate? Well, over time, as we get more popular and transactions start running through the network, those transactions will help pay to run the servers that run the network. Right now, especially when we're basically, I like to think of us as like a startup, right? How do you get a bunch of people that you don't know or strangers around the world to set up a bunch of servers and pay to run servers to run a network for free, essentially? They have to do it on their own money. They got to spend their own money on top of setting it up to pay the rent on that server. And so you have to incentivize them. And those servers are paid with block rewards every time a block is created on the network. And a block is, all the little transactions come through and they stack up into a block, and that block, think of it as like a trolley car. And then that block goes around the network, confirms, and now it's a permanent part of the train. And then every time that train gets connected and that new cart, then 238 TUSC are created. And then those 238 TUSC are divided into 4 pools, which pay for charity, which pay for developers, which pay for marketing, and which pay for the what we call the block producers. Block producers are the word we use for miners in our network. And so I always tell people like this is like, money has a cost to manage. So if you look at like, paper money, they're all run by governments. And how do they pay for them? Well, they pay for them with taxes. Well, I don't have the ability to tax you. So if you look at it like if I go buy something at the store, there's a tax taken out, right? Well, kind of, that in part goes and pays for things like engraving plates and paper and someone moving that paper around and someone designing the money and all that, because there's a huge cost to maintaining the paper supply of US dollars. So we knew that, and unfortunately some crypto products have no funding mechanisms to pay for marketing. They have no funding mechanism to pay for developers. They just hope that they'll do it on the kindness of their heart and things of that nature. We find that we built into our project sustainable funding models for a variety of things. So one of the things we'll be rolling out in the future is a charity function. So we already have a split of block rewards and transaction fees that are filling in this little pool of charity. And the idea over time, and I've already kind of talked to Eric Pratt from Gun Owners, but the idea is that if you buy something with TUSC, there'll be a pool that'll be split between different charities in the space. So when you buy something with TUSC, you're going to be funding maybe the Firearms Policy Coalition, for instance. So that's the long-term plan with that. And so you don't have that with other projects like, Bitcoin, or they're not structured that way. So we decided to structure things a little differently. But to pay for that, you have to have a consistent long-term funding mechanism. And that inflation rate is what pays for that. So again, some people like that or don't get it or don't like it because they're also viewing it through the eyes of, they're viewing it as a speculative asset. But here's the downside. If you're building something to only be a speculative asset like Bitcoin, they call digital gold. The problem is no one wants to spend it because it can go up in money. If I hold on to my Bitcoin, and by the way, I have Bitcoins. I got
everyone's holding right now. Yeah, I spoke to a friend recently who told me that he was in early, and I guess when it was worth, I don't know, $1.50 or something, he thought, oh goodness gracious, I got to sell this stuff. And he's like, dude, I could have made like $100 million. I was like, wow, really? So that's what's happening, right?
Right. So that's part of the reason. But here's the thing. If you think about it, that's an impediment to adoption for using it as a payment method. Because if people just think if I hold on to this, I'm going to get rich, I'm not going to spend it. Well, we want people to spend TUSC. You know, there is that speculative asset or aspect to our asset, but that is not the purpose of it. The purpose of it is to be used as a currency. And we built features into it to act as a currency. And we wanted to do everything possible to encourage people spending it and accepting it rather than people viewing it as an investment only.
Okay. So any comments from anyone out there or questions before?
Well, I think that's actually much better than, like you said, limiting the supply at the outset and causing it to just freeze, economically freeze.
Right, over what Bitcoin is. So I think that's a good explanation of what's going on there. So if we could just switch kind of a little bit here, if I could find out from you guys, I know I have some ideas, but I want to hear from you guys. What are the different ways that the firearms industry should be trying to decentralize, right, to create their own ecosystem? What's the ideas that you guys have? So whoever has ideas, go.
Well, weren't manufacturers talking about starting their own bank? Was there a company in Texas that was going to do their own credit card for the firearms industry and their own bank?
I heard rumors or something to that effect, but nothing that was like, ooh, I need to know more about it. So
yeah.
But even if, let's say, Ruger, Remington, Palmetto State Armory got together and said, we're going to have a bank of guns in, Arlington, Texas, they still could be screwed because their peers that they would have to trade with could say, hey, no, we got
never going to do business with you. Yeah.
Chase, all of those other companies could say, you're freaking toxic. We're not dealing with you.
Yeah. And then they first have to get approval from the feds, right? To even have that. I mean,
setting up banks is a pain.
Yeah, isn't this what Walmart went through? Because I think for years Walmart has been trying to get approval to create a bank. I don't know if they ever finally got it, and maybe that's why we've seen them switch stance. Huh?
To start a bank.
Huh?
Hunter Biden's just like CEO of a bank. I just got the notice.
Sure. I would strenuously avoid that bank. So yeah, what do you guys think about the bank idea?
I think you're making a giant target. And so the thing is about blockchain, for instance. So I am a spokesperson for TUSC. I don't own TUSC. I'm not the CEO of TUSC. I don't control TUSC. I don't have controlling interest in TUSC. I am just the loudest and most talkative member of the community, so they put me out in front. But there is no CEO. There's no TUSC Corporation. There's no TUSC LLC. There's no head to chop off. If I go away, TUSC still exists. The servers are spread across the planet by independent operators. The protocol is launched. Once it's launched, once we launched TUSC, I gave up the control that we had in creating this. And so I think that's the difference. If you make a bank, you got an address and a zip code, and if you now, for instance, had a lot of people running transactions through that bank, now you just got a centralized one single point of failure. And if someone decides they're going to come in and shut it down, it's shut off, and now the whole industry is dependent on that one point of failure, and it's toast. The thing is about crypto technologies. and whether it be for social media or transactions, is that you really do have too many points of failure to shut down that. And in our case, our network is self-healing. So we have 21 main servers that are elected to that position to serve that role as a validating block producer on our network. But we also have an incentive we have 79 backups that are all running. So 79 other block producers are just sitting there running servers. And they run a copy of the blockchain. And if one of those top 21 go down, they could be immediately replaced and it self-heals. And you don't have that with a central like bank, for instance. But on the other hand, because the way our networks run, we're going to be able to do, for instance, this is an announced thing, but we announced a relationship, a partnership and a relationship with Hydro. And they have a multi-coin wallet coming out next month. And we're going to be building out some features for even doing micro loans directly through their wallet with TUSC. So if you want to talk about a bank, you'll be able to do it with the TUSC protocol right through an app you can download for free. And so there's lots of interesting things that are coming out, but there's no bank president to go shut down. These are just protocols or software.
Why build a bank? It's like saying, let's put up telephone lines right now.
Right.
Why do that when we're past like cell phone lines? I mean, Musk is putting up Starlink. Right?
Yes.
So, and here's one quick thing I want to get in here. It seems like if we all wanted to get a piece of TUSC, we can kind of do that. From listening to you talking to Crump yesterday and what you're saying now, if we're out here and we want to somehow participate, we can. Is that true? And how would people do that?
Absolutely.
And not just in terms of the coin, but in other ways, it seems. Right?
Yeah. So when we're called a decentralized network, and what that just means is that there's no central company or central person making decisions. So in our project, for instance, right now about 14% of the supply of TUSC is in a reserve worker fund, and if you wanted to say, for instance, volunteer, I call them incentivized volunteers, but if say you were a developer and you wanted to make something with TUSC, or make an application that used TUSC, you can literally just at any time, middle of the night, write up a proposal, submit it, and it could go to a vote and get approved, and then you're automatically going to receive TUSC for working on that proposal. If it's approved by the community, it's almost like direct democracy in that way. And anybody can do it. You can come up with crazy ideas. Like, I want to design a satellite for TUSC. Okay, it's going to cost me 40 million TUSC. You write a proposal. If the community then votes on it in a certain period of time, it gets approved, you get paid. And there's no 1099 for that either, because it's all done on chain. It just instantly will go to your wallet after the time period's ended. And so we always say, in the way our network works, is how decisions are made are also through voting. And so, and unlike the way the federal government handles elections and the states handles elections, this is pretty robust blockchain voting. And so, and it's pretty hard to game.
Say that again.
So,
what was that, Rich?
Hank, on the bottom of your screen last night, it said, AP says Joe Biden is projected president, and there's robust integrity in the election process.
Yeah, they actually put that on our video last night, which is interesting.
Facebook and Twitter have both been doing that too, saying, this propaganda. And
that's my first time seeing YouTube do it. And it did it when I pulled out a snippet, and basically, Steve, what happened is that there were actually leaks of a conference call between the Biden camp and the ATF, where the Biden camp is asking the ATF what's on top of their wish list and to ban, and they said we want to ban braces and 80% lowers. And this has been confirmed. I think the other firearms-related blogs have confirmed that today, but we were talking about that yesterday. So on the podcast, they did that, and then when I made a snippet of it, they did the same thing.
Amazing.
Participation. So how you vote is one TUSC is one vote. That's simple. So the more TUSC you own, the more votes you have. It's really straightforward and encrypted and safe. And we could, if we use that to, pick presidents, we wouldn't have questions right now about the election. But another thing I think is interesting about decentralized technologies, and I'm kind of involved and at least follow the 3D printed gun community, and all that's being done and basically in decentralized fashion. So you have a bunch of people that are connecting using decentralized encrypted communications and, to help spread files and help talk to each other. And then they're doing rapid engineering iteration real time. If you follow like Control Pew and Ivan out on Twitter and stuff, you'll find that these guys are doing some amazing rapid iteration engineering, and that is also decentralized. It's being done in a decentralized way. Now they are leveraging encryption for their communications by the technologies that they're using for communications and stuff. That's another great use of decentralized, both the concept of a decentralized organization, but also the use of encryption. And it's not just for payments. And then you get into the social media stuff. And I think the gun community needs to start moving over, especially, and you and I have talked about this with Library and some of these other decentralized communication platforms. Though I'm not a super big fan of Parler, I'm on Parler, but it's still run by one central organization.
Yeah.
It's just more, it's like Twitter for like conservatives.
Yeah, I'm on Minds as well. I don't know if isn't Minds decentralized, or am I wrong?
Minds is. Okay. In fact, I just talked to the CEO of Minds at a conference call with him a couple weeks ago. And so Minds is blockchain based. So it's one of those things that it's pretty much almost impossible for them to shut you down on that platform. And the same with Library. Library is a decentralized system for doing, it's basically decentralized YouTube.
Yeah, you told me about that. And I've got my videos are up there already. My whole library, it's crazy.
And has anybody shut your videos down?
No.
Have you made money yet?
Well, I haven't made any kind of wallet or anything like that yet. I have to confess. I haven't done what I'm supposed to do. I'm still trying to figure that out. By the way, I find it super ironic that we're having this conversation and YouTube chooses to crash. It crashed again. That's what people are saying. Like, our numbers went down even more. And they're saying, now I'm seeing people saying that YouTube has crashed worldwide. If you're able to listen to us right now, we're going to keep going with this conversation because it's freaking awesome. But we're recording it separately, so it will be out there at some point, including it's going to be on Library. So we're just going to keep going here for anyone who's concerned about that. But we are aware. People keep seeing lots of messages coming in that YouTube's crashed again. Ironic, right? It's not us. We didn't do it.
It's 2020.
It's 2020. Steve, what's your ideas that you have here? If you were able to talk to the industry and say, guys, we need to do these things, what would you say?
I don't know. I haven't had many opportunities to listen to myself speak, but I have a notion that, as engaging as this conversation might be, I think for most people they'd probably be turning to something else like cat videos or something. I think getting out there and starting conversations about alternate business structures. So basically what Rob's been talking about is like what's called a decentralized autonomous organization. And so his cryptocurrency project is functionally this DAO, this DAO. And these things have to kind of parallel the older structures, the one person like myself that owns, and can exclude, people from it or include people in it. These older paradigms, the new paradigms have to parallel that. And we have to make the philosophical justifications for the new systems based on our humanity and our pre-existing and inalienable rights. So, for good or for worse, freedom is what it is, and they want to make. In the proverbial they, politicians, bureaucrats, anybody who has a draw or an ascent to power.
The Illuminati, whether it's real
whatever
or
you
not.
want to call it.
The zeitgeist.
Government.
Yeah.
They just, they want this vanilla, tax farm. And, everybody has a spirit, and they want to share ideas, and they don't want to be spied on. And they don't want to be stopped. They don't want to be censored. And if you have, a product that you want to sell, I sell mufflers for guns,
Mm-hmm.
hearing protection that you put on the gun.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the onerous levels of compliance that I have to go through from, you know, the ATF all the way through to my local bank is, I mean, it's destructive to creation. And think of the world that we could live in if we can educate enough people, not only about the, you know, the magnitude of the rights we have intrinsic in our humanity, but also now we have systems and protocols, open source protocols that you can actually apply that can lower that friction between people and also keep the people out that you want to keep out. So I think that going forward, and I'm guilty of not doing this just because I don't see that many people. I get locked in a cave and I make stuff, but educating and trying to take the intimidation factor away, trying to work around that. So that it's not so daunting to explain and then to, you know, hopefully encourage and bring people into the encryption and cryptocurrency spaces. You know, I've had many conversations, arguments sometimes even, you know, with friends and family about, you know, keeping your digital footprint as light as possible and keeping things as secure as possible. And a wise man once said, a false sense of security is the only kind there is. And that's true. But we can take responsibility for that and then use it to our advantage. And you know, all the communications that I use between my vendors and when I exchange files and CAD data and solid models, everything gets encrypted end to end. It's just not even negotiable. And mainly for me, it's not the government I'm worried about. I mean, I'm on their radar. It's industrial espionage. You know, it's things of that nature. You know, when you send an email to somebody, that sits on a server, anybody can read it. You know, so and Gmail monetizes it. You know, they scan it. So, but anyway, that the education part of it, the component, the kindergarten. We need cryptocurrency kindergarten. And then take it from there.
Yeah, we need to somehow, I think what you were saying, right? A lot of people in the industry would ignore it, right? Because it's just maybe too much to think about. I get that. We have to figure out how to make this sexy, you know, how to like sugarcoat the pill so that people choose the pill, I guess.
Right. Well, and I think there are market forces that are going to compel that anyway. Yeah. And I think TUSC is the embodiment of preempting that.
Yeah, I agree. I think ultimately, if your freedom is based on education of the masses, you're never going to have freedom. You got to make it just be the better system that people want to participate in. And from the sake of like looking at software, right? You just got to make it the coolest app and make it as easy as possible for people to use because it's cool and maybe it incentivizes them rather than trying to sell the merits of its encryption. And that's what I think our goal is, at least maybe hopefully in a year or whenever we can do it, is that I don't want people to know it's crypto. I wanted to people just to understand this is just, it's like Venmo, and we just make it so easy for them to use that it doesn't even, you know, register that it's a cryptocurrency. And to me, that is the ultimate goal of, you know, pretty much of all software design, right? Is just that you keep the complicated stuff below the surface and just abstract or just make it on the front end really easy and simple to use.
Yeah. Were you going to say something here, Rich? Please, go ahead.
You got to make a plugin for OnlyFans, then you'll be popular.
Well, my OnlyFans is at Rob McNealy. No, it's OnlyFans / Rob McNealy. And
oh
we did
boy.
Never mind.
Yeah.
That's my other channel. But.
What can we do? What can we do to make this? What are the things that we could do to make this? I know you're saying to like you on your end, you're like making you know, a good application, right? That's useful for people. But what can we do? Like, what is it? What's the responsibility of the rest of us to help out with this? Like, having met Steve, I realize here's a guy making suppressors. To me, suppressors are some of the coolest things. I think every gun should be suppressed. It's criminal that every gun is not suppressed, in my opinion.
Right.
So, but now I've discovered someone that understands this. I'm thinking, what can I do to help him more, get him out there more, and help him do what he's doing? And how can we figure out to make it palatable to everyone out there to do this? Because we need it now more than ever. I'm really worried that when everything truly burns down, this is not even the burn down yet, but when things truly burn down, it'll be too late for us to try to scramble and put all these systems together if we don't already have them in place.
I think that's exactly my point, right? Is that there is a rush to getting adoption, I believe, of cryptocurrency, because I think otherwise, if we don't get decentralized cryptocurrencies actually being used for buying and selling things, I think when the government coins come out or the centralized banker coins come out, they're going to have a lot of monetary power, and they're going to have the ability to force feed them to people. And I think that's a race. And I think ultimately we need to get out there and get people using it, knowing about it, and getting comfortable with the concept.
Here's something people should understand, is that if the federal government in 2020, whether it's Trump or whoever's president, if they had a choice between the currency being dollars or some sort of blockchain-based currency, they would pick blockchain. Because right now I can give my landscaper $100 to cut my lawn. But if you give him 100 blockchain dollars, they know my company paid me, it went into my bank, it came from me, it went to him, and they could actually tax him on that. So that's the scary thing. That if the Fed starts talking about blockchain cryptocurrency, however you want to call it, that's going to be a screwing for everyone.
Yeah, and convertibility, I think, is going to be a critical facet. You have your know your customer and anti-money laundering, minutia, and it's like a big wet blanket, and when you can convert, and the only thing I hope that comes out of something like a digital dollar or this blockchain dollar is the easier convertibility into these, chains, blockchains, and things like that you can then use for your privacy. So hope that's kind of the silver lining to something like that. And hopefully there's a way to convert it without giving up your identity.
Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of things like that popping up now, like little micro credit cards where you can limit the amount of money on it and what it pays to and things like that. They're trying to take these good ideas and kind of, swallow them up, right? Like a big ship takes the little ship, and then they can do whatever they want to do with it. If there's folks out there that are listening to this and they want to find out more about some of the stuff that we're saying, like blockchain or anything else here, crypto coin or whatever, where would you guys recommend that they go to get up on all this information?
That's for you, Rob, because I don't have any.
Yeah.
That's a little tougher.
Okay.
So I don't know of one specific great single source that kind of walks newbies through it. I would say, what's that?
MountGox.com.
Yeah, that's a good way not to do it.
Yeah, what is that you're talking about there, Flying Rich? Someone's going to have to explain that.
So Mt. Gox was an exchange. So while I was mining Bitcoin, I would just directly deposit it into my wallet at Mt. Gox. And then you could trade between dollars and Bitcoin. So it was real interesting early on is the market would go up and down, and I could trade in and out of Bitcoin into dollars in my Mt. Gox account. Well, I don't know how many years ago it was, but Mt. Gox went belly up. And they're like, see you later. Coins, schmoins, who knows?
Wow. So you never recovered any of that?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
and the bankruptcy group, so this is in Hong Kong, the bankruptcy group still hasn't figured out what they're doing yet. And they will pay you back in dollars what your Bitcoin was worth at that time, because I'm sure the bankruptcy group is keeping the damn Bitcoin because they're worth $15,000 a piece right now. So they could give us, basically pay us out at like 0.01%, which would be what we lost in dollars at the time.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so there's a good podcast that I'm not there. There's a billion podcasts out there, but literally crypto101podcast.com. I do know the hosts of that show. They do a lot of good information on, good high level information that newbies can understand. I would check that out if people are just looking for a general understanding of crypto across different types of projects. And if you have an interest in a specific project, every different crypto project typically has web pages and Telegram groups and Discord groups and documentation. So even for TUSC, we have some videos on our blog and articles on how to do things in TUSC and how to use the wallet that we have right now. And so every project is going to have those basic elements. Like there's going to be a wallet. There might be a downloadable wallet or a cloud wallet. Everybody's going to have to figure out how to protect their keys. Then there's things like hardware wallets versus paper wallets and things like that. So those general concepts are universal across all crypto products. But understand there's 5,000 crypto assets out there now in the world. I think if we had our market cap, we're probably in the mid 500s. Of all those products. So, that's kind of where we fall right now. But I think it's like anything else, getting active in the group. So in our Telegram group, there's always somebody watching and listening to that group. That is helpful if you have a question about something. And a lot of times the group itself will kind of do its own tech support. I'm someone came in there today and said, I forgot my username. I have my keys, but I forgot my username. How do I access it? And a couple people from the community jumped in and kind of walked them through it. And people just kind of do that with these communities. They're kind of like self-help groups for liberty activists. But I think there's so many resources. I guess that's what I mean. Steve and Rich and I were trying to find one is hard because there's literally so many resources out there to find information about crypto and specific crypto products and across the board. It's everywhere.
Yeah. I think, and it's probably, I would say, so if you're ever up late at night and you can't sleep,
just put you to sleep.
Yeah, just search on YouTube, put in what is Bitcoin or whatever, right? And just start looking at some videos until you fall asleep. At least if you're sleeping and it's still going, you're going to be subliminally learning something. Might not be good though.
Sure.
Yeah, might not be the best thing in the world out there. You know what? I think we kind of neglected to find out from Steve more info about Rex. What is it? Rex Silentium. Rex Silentium. Tell us more about this company. I'm gonna pull up your webpage here and see what I can see.
So I've been in manufacturing for 20 years. I've done a lot of consulting and a lot of design work, product design development. And I've always been involved in firearms. I've been a competitor across all the different parts of the spectrum: pistol, shotgun, rifle, 3-gun, that stuff. Suppressors kind of got more and more mainstream, I think, around 2014. And, I decided to, in 2016, go through all the steps I had to go through to become to kiss the ring and then to have permission to make these mufflers. And so that was the beginning of the journey for, the products that you're seeing today. I learn by doing. I've never learned from success, but I learn often from failure.
Okay.
And I'm a rigorous empiricist. So I started to unpack, suppressor technology and find out if anybody had discovered, certain relationships between the geometries and features, and slowly categorized them and cataloged them, and found the relationships and these complicated compressible fluid dynamics at hypervelocities. And I found a system that works very, very well. And then the economist in me began hunting for ways to deliver this to the market to my benefit and the market's benefit. Mm-hmm. And that's what the embodiment of Rex Silentium is right now.
What does this name even mean? I think that was
it's Latin for Kings of Silence.
Kings of Silence. Makes sense.
So, and the reason I chose a plural version of that and not the King of Silence, or Silentium Rex is how that would be said, is because I didn't invent the concepts, and I have I'm not out there copying people, but I'm using the masters in their class to see, well, what works. Do they know what works? Or did they just accidentally find it? Or so that's what I've been doing. So I don't want to just I can't. It's certainly no part of me is that haughty to say we're the King of Silence, but that's just And again, I told you, I think at the outset, I would have changed that name if I could, but now it's a brand.
No, it's good. No, you listen. You have to just get us to figure out how to say it properly. That's part of the fun.
So I've come up with other ways, like so we have a URL, custom silencers. That's so if I don't want to, if the people I'm talking to don't want to hear that, Rex Silentium, or try to look at it, written down, custom silencers, silent Rex.
Right.
Silent.
Oh, okay. So where are you based?
Bozeman, Montana.
Montana. Okay. Very cool.
I've been out here for 20 years. When I got out of school, I decided to. I was a machinist while I was in school. I decided to start my own machine company, and then just little by little, it all grew.
Okay. Awesome. So what are some of the cool projects? I think we're all interested in suppressors here.
Right.
What are some of the cool projects you guys have going on that we should know about?
Well, I have consistently tried to make a system so right now we make a completely welded suppressor, mainly for durability and the pressures and everything involved. What I've been trying to do in the last year is separate the aperture, or the bore. Okay, that's the hole that the projectile will travel through. I've been trying to separate that from the baffle structure, because normally what you do is you have this baffle and you have the geometries, and they're all carved out of one piece. And the reason I'm trying to change that, I can't really go too far into it because it would betray the secrecy of what it is, but. What I'm working on now is a system to one suppressor. One suppressor that is user serviceable, economical, and you can change the aperture without changing, the baffle. And then that also has a legal component to it also, because baffles are regulated, but other parts of the suppressor, like an end cap or a mount, are not.
Right. Okay.
So there's also legal, I believe, a good legal impetus to do that. But then that would allow us to offer a suppressor that could literally span the gap from 22 long rifle through all the rifle, cartridges and magnums.
Does it go up to 50 BMG?
Theoretically, it could, but that embodiment would be just massive.
It'd be heavy.
So the current design we're working on, it was an offshoot of a 12-gauge suppressor. Okay. And I've built up people's expectation. I don't know how many people, but I've built up people's expectation for this 12-gauge suppressor that we keep threatening we're going to release. Well, we made a discovery, and so that's what we're chasing now. So instead of just pushing this out the door in a relatively undercooked way, and we want to take it into this into this this area that they're like prime mover advantage. There's nobody that does that. I mean, yeah, they have like universal suppressors that are 45 caliber, but when you put them on a 22 caliber, because the aperture matters so much to the suppression, it sounds like crap. So you have one that the projectile will pass through, but if you're not suppressing, what are you doing?
Yeah. So you're kind of trying to make one suppressor to really rule them all.
Yeah.
Everyone's been chasing that.
Go into Lord of the Rings. Yeah. And that's that. But you can. It's something you can change legally yourself, and you're not going to be in violation or out of compliance. So.
Okay, so along the lines of what we're talking about here, like decentralization and stuff like that, what do you think about the universal suppressor standards? I've kind of been digging into that lately. Have you heard of that? What do you think about that?
The universal suppressor standards?
Yeah, universal. I think it might be universal silencer standards. Here, I'll...
Is this a community thing or a government thing?
No, I think it's a thing in suppressors, and I guess it's kind of unofficial. If you Google universal silencer standard, and it comes up like a 1.375 by 24 TPI, and so basically what it is like the back end of the suppressor is on a specific thread pitch.
Yep.
So you can. Yeah.
Right, I didn't know. That sounded a lot bigger than it was. Yeah. So our rifle cans all have that thread on.
Oh, they do. Awesome.
Yeah. So because there's no reason to force anybody out of systems they've invested in. We actually have a Rex QD right now, and it has that same thread, so it goes into our cans, it'll go into other cans, and so on and so forth. So
I think it's kind of unofficial. But since I discovered it, I thought, wow, this is great. When I get accessories, if they have this common thread in there, I could figure out how to put these different suppressors on different guns without and I get why, because I guess those accessories are expensive to manufacture, so they're expensive when they sell them. But on the user end, that's really it's kind of it's a tough deal. You wind up sometimes.
It makes it easier to own the things, so you don't have just this proprietary can that you see something an accessory that comes out that's really cool, but you can't use it. Yeah, and I think I'm looking forward to more people doing that. And so, are you going to build this suppressor that you're talking about here using that same thread pitch? Oh, for sure. Yeah, we want to keep everything as user friendly, as possible. So I don't want to switch things around, and even for the sake of innovation, I think there's many ways to make it user friendly. That's one of them.
Yeah, I'll be very interested in this. I think it also opens up, by having that standard, it opens up the market for guys who don't want to get into all the stuff it takes to be a suppressor manufacturer, and they can make accessories off of that thread pitch.
And they make some really great ones. There's some companies out there that are proximate to the market that aren't making suppressors, but making some very cool items for the suppressors. Like, for example, suppressor wraps. They've come a long way. That's an instrumental part of your kit when you're shooting like long range, because the suppressor heats up and you get mirage. So it'll distort your impacts.
Yeah. Also reduces getting those big burn marks, which I have a bunch of.
Right. Lighting fires in the back of your car.
Yeah, exactly. Are you guys, Rob, Rich, are you guys into suppressors?
I'm not yet, but I hang out with a guy who runs a suppressor company every now and then. In Salt Lake, we actually have several suppressor manufacturers.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, quite a few. Yeah.
Silencer Co., OSS, and Dead Air are out here. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Very interesting. I like all of those cans, and I think those guys are doing. Silencer Co. is where the standard thread pitch actually came from. I think they were the first one. I think
you're right,
yeah, they were doing it, and everyone was like, well, let's just use that. Dead Air has a bunch of those. Rich, what do you think about cans? Do you have any?
I think it's great. I'm actually a suppressor virgin, but I want to set up a range on my property, and I don't want to piss my neighbors off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Like Hank has no problem pissing his neighbors off.
There, I've found, and we actually capture a good amount of first-time, suppressor buyers, and it's crack cocaine. I mean, when you get your first can, you want to put a can on everything.
Yeah,
everything
needs to have a can.
It's just, you shoot a 22, safely, in your backyard, and it's quieter than a pellet gun.
With your Wix fuel filter.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Oh boy.
The solvent trap.
Well, Wish keeps trying to. This is the thing is like Facebook hates gun guys, but Wish is always trying to sell me an illegal suppressor right through Facebook.
Don't fall for it, bro.
I always say, "Nice try, Mr. ATF man in China."
Yeah.
Don't walk into the light. Yeah, the Chinese will be happy for us all to start getting arrested.
Oh my gosh.
That's the reason that's kept me out of some of the class 3 stuff, because I would have to buy right now, a whole bunch of different calibers and sizes. And what you're talking about would make me, and that's expensive. I don't have 20 grand to go blow on a bunch of cans. But I would blow a grand or whatever and for a can and a couple, different interchangeable apertures in a heartbeat, because that would make sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's that's where we're headed with it. And we have to go through some failure cycles before it matures enough and congeals enough that we can offer it. But it's well on its way.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll be happy to, if you're looking for people to help you test those out.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll help you fail. I'm good at failing.
Yes,
I'm really good. My wife will tell you that.
You have to sign a liability waiver.
Everyone's volunteering right now. Yeah.
I want to fail.
I want to be responsible for developing the first integrally suppressed bullpup. I don't know, some weird caliber. There's probably the first integrally suppressed bullpup shotgun. Yeah, that would be cool. There isn't one, is there?
I don't think so.
No, yeah, I do have a bullpup shotgun, a couple of them, and I've got suppressors. But integral, man, it's all about the integral. If we can
there's the flexibility. You give up some of your flexibility with integral, and with the suppressor technology that's out there now, you can, because I think integral suppression was like state of the art when you could really get this Hollywood quiet out of the system, whereas now the technology with the the muffler at the end of your barrel is giving that to you. So, and then you can put that on different hosts, whereas you're kind of locked in with integral suppression.
Yeah, that's true. I still want to do it though.
Yeah, it looks cool.
Yeah, absolutely it does. Shout out to Hootie Hoo. I see that. I think there's people able to come through, and it looks like our numbers went up a little bit here. I know a lot of people gave up just because it was so crazy. I don't know if anyone has questions. We're talking about TUSC, which is the easiest way to explain it to you guys. It's like Bitcoin for the firearms industry. We're having this discussion here about decentralizing our ecosystem. So in other words, all the things that we need to survive, all the things that people could turn off, like us being on social media, being able to put up your videos, being able to buy and sell things. We're having that discussion here. We've got about 10 minutes left. I think it's been great, and I want to make sure that I cram as much info in here as I can, even though I'm going to invite these guys to come back on if they don't mind. Everyone except Rich. Pebbles the bird could come back on anytime. But not right. So, we even though there's been troubles, we've recorded this whole thing. It's all going to go up. So what should we, in this time that we have left here, what are the things you guys think we should cover? I don't know if you've got anything, Steve or Rob, Rich. What stuff have we left out?
Let's start with Rob.
Oh, always volunteering me.
Yeah, we're all here to pick your brains, Rob.
I would say number one is for especially the people that are uninitiated, people that are new to crypto and blockchain technologies, is understand that there are a whole set of technologies that are being developed, that allow people to take control of their personal data and to take control of their financial data and their social media data and eliminate middlemen that can control their data, that sell their data, that abuse their data, that manipulate their data, and understand that blockchain and cryptocurrencies are that new innovation, that new paradigm. That is, these are technologies that can free people if they're done in a decentralized way, or these are also technologies that can be weaponized against us if they're done in a decentralized way, like we certainly are seeing in China. And so to me, I think the number one thing is know that they exist, know that there's a TUSC, know that there's a library, know that there's a mines out there that are available that are right now able to start replacing the PayPals and the YouTubes and the Twitters of the world. Understand that those technologies exist, and we need to support those technologies.
Something I would ask here, a couple of things. One, TUSC can be used as a PayPal replacement, do you think? Is that something? Yeah. Okay.
That's exactly what we're looking at long term.
Okay.
A lot of things have to happen, and a lot of infrastructure is going to be built to do that, and has to be built to do that.
Okay.
But we named it the Universal Settlement Coin for a reason, right? We didn't call it Assault Rifle Coin, okay?
Right.
Because but Jeff Bezos also didn't call it AmazonBookstore.com either, right? Because Jeff Bezos knew that he wanted to go into other industries besides the book industry. I think long term, I certainly would like to see that if we got enough adoption in certain niche industries, that we would expand and expand the focus and the marketing into other industries. That's not on the radar right now, but we wanted to keep the branding and things generic enough so that would be an option later if we're successful, because I want there to be adoption of cryptocurrency technologies for payments universally. And so I think I'm hoping that at some point we will absolutely at least give PayPal a run for its money long term. But we're trying to build something that's going to be here for 100 years. So when you're looking at those kind of timescales, a lot's got to happen. But we're also not in a hurry. We're a decentralized project, but if we look at it like this, we have no debt, we have no overhead. Literally, our overhead's about $100 a month. We have no full-time employees. We have a working product in the field that's already out there. And 14% of the supply is in the worker proposal fund to help grow the project as we become more liquid. So if we were a startup, those are great. Those are things that would make a startup a really great project. And it's taken us almost 3 years to get here, right? So, we're not like brand new. We've been working on this for some time now. So I think I'm real excited because we're at the point now where we're not running away from running out of money like a lot of startups do, right? And so we're sustainable now. And so we can take as long as it needs to take to get to be successful because we built it that way.
Yeah. I see Len Holt says Pow Pow coin. Pow Pow coin, Pew Pew coin. I don't know if we obviously people are welcome to do whatever they want to. He also says boom. No, I think TUSC is a good name as far as I'm concerned for the reasons that you said there, but I don't think the name is the most important thing. What can we do? What can those of us looking, what can Steve, what can Rich, what can myself, what can I do to help you with this?
Oh, wow. Well, like any other project, we always need help because we're always doing something. So if you guys know any developers, we could use some developers. If we know people that are good at marketing, we always could use help with marketing. Anybody can contribute. We will take the smallest amount of time or effort or skill because anybody's help could be useful in our community because we're building a community, essentially. So we certainly need help on all fronts, and that just doesn't go away. And as we grow, we're going to need more. Getting people out there. If you guys are interested, go set up a free TUSC wallet. Just go to TUSC.network, set up a wallet, and if I could make sure that you have some coins in your wallet when that happens, and then we can play around with it. And I want people to know they're not going to break it. Right. This is something that's really reliable stuff, but we want to break things now, anyways, on the site and with the project. So if there is a problem, we can fix it. And before we do our big retailer onboarding and push next year. So ultimately, it's just like we're trying to grow things. Like we're looking for input too. Like, what do people need? Like, I really have loved hearing Steve talk today, because like, to me, we did that in the beginning, but I love hearing what retailers' experiences are, and Steve's story with PayPal and your story with PayPal and some of these things. I've heard this a lot. I mean, it's why we did this, because
there's a lot of gun guys they've banned, a lot.
And
just people they don't agree with in general. I think there's other communities and people they're against.
Absolutely. So, even the CBD community has a problem. I have a friend of mine, and so we have like a body armor company accepts TUSC right now. Okay. We have a couple CBD shops that are going to accept TUSC, because guess what? They're not even illegal nationwide anymore. Hemp is not illegal, and CBD is not THC and weed and all this stuff, and they can't use PayPal, and they're having a hard time with credit card processing too.
Lots of things.
They can't even open a checking account.
Yeah.
I mean, the growers out here are tangentially in the firearms industry because they have to protect stacks of cash because they can't actually bank.
Yeah.
And that creates another issue, because and when we looked at TUSC and what other industries would be interesting that also have a problem with payments, right? Those industries are all distasteful to somebody, right? But when you look at the cannabis industry, not just CBD but the actual real stuff, which is legal in like half the states now, but still federally illegal. And if you're caught doing weed related stuff and you got a gun on you, it's like a huge additional felony for having a weapon while you're committing drug trafficking.
And they're going to use that.
And they're going to use it. And so cryptocurrencies also solve a problem in those industries. And they have different problems. That's what I was kind of saying earlier. The gun industry has its own set of problems with payments, but like cannabis has a very different set of problems, right? Because at least they can get credit card processing, even though it's just super high, expensive, and I got all sorts of problems with that on the gun side. The cannabis industry can't use it at all. And so they have other issues carrying around stacks of cash. And I'm like, those are really good problems to have, though. And I would definitely figure out a way to solve those problems. But crypto could help that industry tremendously as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever I can do to help you out, we'll probably talk about some of that behind the scenes here. I'm not trying to hide anything from anyone. I know we're already at the 9 o'clock hour, but I'm going to do what I can to help you out. Here's what I'm going to do right now, since we are at the 9 o'clock hour. I'm going to kind of go around the clock and give everyone a chance to tell the folks out there who are listening to this, how they can find you guys and what they can do to support you, what social medias or whatever you're on, under what names. I will definitely have these guys back if they would like to come back. And I know that it's been tough for everyone to listen with all the things going on today, but that's why we're having this conversation. I don't think things are going to get easier here. I think it's going to get tougher as time goes forward. Let me start with Richard Hughes, Flying Rich. How can the folks out there get in touch with you and support you?
Yeah, sure. So flyingrich.com is where all my social media is, youtube.com/flyingrich and flyingrich_official on Instagram. I just want to say thanks to all the jerks at Reddit for blowing up a video of mine, the Stop the Steal video. 15,000 Redditors came and viewed my video and made nasty comments.
They trolled you to victory.
That's awesome.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, okay, great. Let's go to Steve. Steve, where can the folks out there, where can they find out more information about you guys? How can they follow you, for example, on social media?
Yeah, so we only do one social media. It's Instagram, and that's just Rex Silentium.
Okay.
RexSilentium.com, and you can also just email us at sales@rexsilentium.com also.
Okay.
Wait, what's your simple URL?
Pardon?
Your simple URL that I can spell.
Silent Rex.
Yeah.
Silent Rex.
So
or custom silencers. That's one of the things we do, is make custom silencers. So if you have a specific caliber and you want a specific length and weight or whatever, we can literally make it and form it and sell it to you.
Yeah, and I'm gonna roll in here before we do anything else. Go look, if you put in REX in Instagram, you're gonna see Rex Silentium come up. There you go. And you're actually following me, which is awesome. I'm going to follow you back. I'm going to encourage everyone who's here, who's watching us, please go follow these guys on Instagram. I have a feeling that Steve is going to have an alternative probably running sometime soon. I don't know. Fingers crossed. I don't know if you have time for that or not, Steve, to the Instagrams. Who knows what's going to happen with that?
Right. I don't, I mean, it could, they could kick me off anytime, I suppose, deplatform me. It's one of the reasons I've only invested in one. And, if it happens, it happens. But,
yeah.
I use it mainly for customer service,
okay.
Just people so that they can access me and ask questions.
Yeah, absolutely. If anything happens, let us know. We've got contact information for each other. We'll absolutely do everything that we can to help the folks out there find out what the alternatives would be.
Right.
And then, Rob, thanks so much for coming on, man. How can the people out there, how can they communicate with you? What should they follow and all that kind of stuff?
Oh, well, just Rob McNealy on Twitter and anywhere else, robmcnealy.com for the personals, and then TUSC.network. And so just go to TUSC.network, TUSC.network.
Okay, absolutely. And say that again, Rich.
TUSC Network on Instagram.
TUSC Network on Instagram.
Yes.
There you guys go. We'll hopefully have all these guys come back here and we'll keep talking about this. I think it's going to take time. I'm going to get involved. I'll get into it. Do you have a video anywhere of how someone can create a TUSC wallet?
There is. It's on our blog at TUSC.network.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so there you go. Go look at that video. You probably told me about it already, so...
Probably.
Yes, absolutely. I will make sure I go look at that. I want to thank everyone so much for coming on, having this conversation with us, hanging out with us. On our side, it was easy and fun. I know it was really difficult for the audience out there because of all everyone who was listening to us or watching us live on YouTube. It was a little crazy, so we appreciate the patience of those of you guys who stuck with us. Stay right there, everyone. Don't leave. I'm going to run in the end, and then I'm going to come back and give someone the final word here. Here we go. Here's the end. Make sure you guys smash those thumbs ups, ring the bell so you can be notified every time we go live. We are going to rip the audio out of this and throw it up on iTunes and all the other places where you get your audio podcast from. We've got people listening to us all over the world, and we appreciate all of those people. Okay, let's see. I guess we should get Rob. Do you want to give us the final word?
Oh, I don't know. What should be the final word?
I don't know. Steve?
Always encrypt.
Oh, okay, good one. Always encrypt. All right.
That's a good word.
There you go. Always encrypt. Good. We are out of here. Thanks so much, guys. Thanks to everyone out there. We really appreciate you guys. Peace. We're out.